Thanks for listening to Entre Neato, the show where we interview neat people with neat stories to help you live your neato life. Our goal is simple. It's to inspire, challenge, and empower you to achieve more in life. Whether you're considering the leap from your 9-to-5, creating side hustles, or becoming the best version of you, you've come to the right place and we're glad you're here. So let's get started. Welcome back to Entre Neato. My guest today is Scott Amyx, author of the book Strive. Scott Amyx is the chair and managing partner at Amyx Ventures and Singularity University, Smart City Accelerator mentor, and startup board member. Drawing on his own powerful story of an impoverished immigrant frequently told that he would mount to nothing, Amyx, now a celebrated venture capitalist and futurist. Isn't that the coolest title, Futurist? That's amazing. Describes his meteoric rise from obscurity to prominence. Scott's feature book, Strive, is available for order. Find out how doing the things most uncomfortable leads to success. This was a great interview, so make sure you get a copy of this wherever books are sold. Make sure you get your copy today. It's such a refreshing viewpoint on success, and I know it'll change your life if you apply the principles. So we are super excited and honored to have Mr. Amyx today on the show. Without further ado, we give you Scott Amyx. Welcome back to Entre Neato. My guest today is Scott Amyx. Scott, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Matt.
Super excited to have you on today. I read your book, Strive, How Doing the Most Uncomfortable Things Leads to Success. And I have read a lot of business books, had the opportunity to learn a lot of things, YouTube clips, things like that. And your approach was so refreshing and so honestly unique. And there are so many books, so much content. We are inundated with a lot of amazing thought leaders and thinkers and concepts. But this one was really interesting. And I thought, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. So there's a ton of content we could go into. But today I just wanted to focus on why we should strive for discomfort. But before we get into that, I just wanted to have you promote away websites, social media, anything you'd like to promote for our listeners.
Absolutely. Well, I love to direct them to my book, Strive, How Doing the Things Most Uncomfortable Leads to Success. And it's available on Amazon and pretty much any e-tailing site that sells books and audio files as well. And it's also available internationally with translation.
Perfect. Well, before we get started, I'd just love to get into your backstory before we talk about today's topic and just kind of how you got to where you are today.
Absolutely. It's a tough story. You know, when you think about some great historical figures, they rose to incredible feats and eventually fame that is chronicled in history books. And I think they started out because they experienced an outsized level of hardship that built character. So if we, think about some of the Bible verses that talks about how perseverance and trial and tribulation creates these character building traits, patience, understanding, that in turn gives us the ability to have faith and to withstand the storms of life. So I grew up without a father. I don't have any recollection of my father whatsoever. And my mother had less than fourth grade education. And we grew up right into poverty. And this was in South Korea, in Seoul. And this was right after the Civil War and just when the country was just kind of starting to rebuild itself in the 1970s. And for those that are less familiar with South Korea, the history is that it's also referred to as a hermit nation. It's a peninsula off China in between Japan. It was a colony of Japan for some 45 years, and then went right into World War II. And then after that, there was a civil war between the North, backed by the Chinese communists, and South, backed by the U.S. So until this day, we're still technically in active war. And of course, most listeners are very familiar with what's happening in North Korea and the recent administration's diplomacy with North Korea. So it's a very volatile state, and it's very rich in history, but also rich in challenges. So when the country was in the 60s and 70s, it was literally coming out of the ashes. And if you visited war-torn countries around the world, whether it's East Germany or the former blocks of USSR or even parts of Africa, let's say, war does incredibly devastating things to people physically as well as their mindset. So our GDP as a nation was just literally a couple $100, and it was lower than most sub-Saharan African nations at that point in time. But as a nation, we decided that we need to focus on the people because half of a peninsula, half of a country with very little natural resources, the only resources we had were people. So they made the effort to build up the human capital and increase and develop new institutions. And so now, we went from shoe manufacturing, clothes manufacturing. We were the kind of the old China manufacturing base in the 80s, moved up the value chain to create semiconductor smartphones, and of course now we know about Samsung, LG, and so forth. Mm-hmm. But that's a really great drawback because similarly for us as individuals, and certainly for myself, we can come from the lowest level of the economic totem pole, and yet those hardships that we experience in life are there for a purpose. And as a Christian, one thing that I'm very much aware is that these hardships are very much the story that we're to be sharing with others. And I think Strive was one of my first attempts to share some of those learnings, those experiences with others. People sometimes ask, if there's God, why do people die from cancer, and why are these, bad things and crises that happen?
Sure.
That's a tough one. But what I would say is these experiences allow for us to have the ability to have empathy, to connect with people and to understand their circumstances and say, I've gone through that and I understand. I know what it's like to be unemployed. I know what it's like to, maybe go through financial difficulty. I know what it's like to be part of a fragmented or broken family. So I've experienced a lot of those things firsthand. So it's, I'll go more into my life story as we talk more, but I'll just pause there for a minute.
That's amazing. And I think, too, just reading through the book, there's a lot in there in the struggles and the hardships and the things that you went through. One note is to think how amazing it is that Korea went from being a third world nation to a first world nation. That is amazing to think about all the logistics and everything that has to happen for that to turn around, which is amazing. You're a product of that. Same in your life and more of a micro level versus the macro level with a nation. The question I was thinking about as I read your story and read the book and the takeaways, was there ever a point where you wanted to quit, where you just had one door slammed after another in your face and you were just like, okay, maybe this is not supposed to happen? Or were you emboldened by that? Or did that help you grow?
Yeah, so one thing that's unique about me is that I'm a lifetime entrepreneur, and I've started some 10 or more startups in the past, exited twice and acquired and so forth, but also many failures as well. One venture in particular, in the early I think the 2010s or so, actually a little bit before then, was the kind of early genesis of what we call today robo-advisor. So robo-advisor like Wealthfront and some of the others, they were kind of my peers back then. So I had invested some $300,000 or more of my personal money into that venture.
Wow.
Had a staff of developers and designers developing essentially the early generation of robo-advisor in fintech. And after a couple of years, and there was a point in time where there was some possibility of an acquisition, but things didn't quite work through. But eventually, I ran out of money, and I couldn't raise the next round, and I found myself having to let go of my employees. Lost a big portion of my savings and was in a very difficult position. And one of the things that I noticed was, when things are going great, there's a lot of people around you. But when things are going sour, it's amazing. The people that you thought you were close to start to disappear, and you can literally count them in just one hand, single digits. But that was a very difficult time, and I think it took about a couple of years for me to get out of that slump. And I remember just to get by having to take some contract positions, working at technology firms in Silicon Valley. And I found myself driving to work, and for no reason, just kind of tearing up and just filled with emotion, this sense of hopelessness and grief. Not just a failure, but just sadness, incredible sadness. And it was interesting because while I was in this, kind of this deep depression after this big failure, One of the things that I was doing at church was I was volunteering for a position called the Stevens Ministry, where layperson Christians can be trained, and it's a 2-year commitment effectively, where we get trained for many months to become layperson helpers. They don't like to use the word counseling, but really, in effect, we end up becoming layperson therapists. So I was matched up with a man who's a police officer, and he was going through a recent divorce. And what was amazing was, even though I was in this incredibly deep emotional slump, every time that I met with this man who was going through even worse because of this divorce, and over time, and I met with him over the course of a year and a half or so, I saw the transformation, and I saw how God was working in him. And every time I walked away from that session, listening and working with him, I was renewed, and I was reminded that God is very much alive, and if he's working in his life, he must be working in my life. And I think that period was incredibly important because it forced me to really think about what was working and what was not working. And like I mentioned in my TED Talk as well as in the book to an extent, is that that was kind of the time period when I was about to turn 40 or so. And what I realized was, in the past, it was always about the product, the idea, the team, the capital, the execution. But what was missing in the picture was me. I've always been very shy, introverted. I never wanted to be in the limelight. I'm not very talkative. I tend to listen more than talk. And I was all about anonymity. In social media, you couldn't even find my last name. But one of the things I realized was, eventually, for me to have bigger success, for me to have bigger impact, and this is so true for you, the listeners, is if you want to have a bigger impact, bigger success, you yourself have to become the platform. You have to become the brand. So I made a conscious decision over the last 4 or 5 years to develop my brand, develop my voice, develop my thought leadership, so that today I literally travel the world. I was just tapped by Washington Speaking Bureau, for example, for a very high-profile speaking engagement. And I literally travel the world speaking to politicians and NGOs and industry leaders. Just today, I just got off a phone of engagement with a very large publicly traded electronics company, and really giving them thought-provoking insights into how the landscape is changing for them, the business, the macroeconomics, as well as the underlying technologies. But I tell you, I cannot be where I am today had I not made the conscious decision to become a platform and become a brand and do the things that's uncomfortable, which meant for me to be in the limelight and to be in the forefront. And I'll be very honest with you, Matt. When I travel the world, I'm one of the only few Asians on stage or at the level that I am at, interacting with the European Commission, UNITU, and so forth. So I have to say, and I'm certainly one of the only few Korean Americans ever at that level. So again, it's very uncomfortable, but if you want to make an impact, guess what? You have to go out to the edge.
Wow, that's so good. And I love the story because you had a choice to make. You could have said like, wow, I lost all this money, I had to let people go, I lost my company. And since we find our identity a lot of times in the wrong things and things that we're like, well, I find my identity in what I own or what I do or things like that. So you had a choice to choose to be isolated, to recluse yourself, to just kind of be cut off and shut in from people because you were going through depression and some major things that a lot of people haven't even had the opportunity to experience in a negative way. But you chose to give back and to help others. That is like so crucial. And I think so many times in lives we go through something tough, we go through a challenge, and we just draw back, and we don't have relationship, we don't have community. And a lot of times we don't even think about helping somebody else. Like, I'm the one hurting, I'm the one struggling. People should be helping me. I'm having a hard time. But instead you said, okay, I'm just going to keep breathing. I'm going to get up. I'm going to keep doing the things I need to do. And plus, I'm going to help other people. I'm going to listen to other people. That is amazing. So congratulations on that, because I really feel like it is a defining point in your life of where we may not have ever heard of you, because a lot of people, they get into that depression and they become frozen in time. and you never hear of them again doing anything. I know we're getting a little bit closer here on time, but I would love to kind of get a quick overview of like, while we talk about why we should strive for discomfort. Like that seems like such a strange concept to most people. What would your takeaway be from that?
Yeah, well, thank you, Matt, for that summary, by the way. And I couldn't concur with you more. Is that one of the things that I've learned as a skill is this notion of resiliency, resolve, and it's not so much about failure as much as your ability to be able to rebound and rebound quickly. There is going to be setbacks, physical setbacks, financial setbacks, relational setbacks. But the key is, how are you able to get back up? So I will have some terrible days, but it's amazing. After I wake up the next morning, I am ready to go at it again.
Wow.
And that's kind of my motto is, I never give up. I may fail hard, but I'm going to work harder. And I think one of the things that's important is, and I talk about this in the book, is having a purpose-driven life, a mission-driven life. So when I introduce myself to people, I don't give out a long list of titles and so forth. I start with a very simple personal mission statement, which is, God has made it very clear in my life that my mission field is the world. And to go out to the world to create sustainable economic development. The way we help societies and nations is so that they can be economically independent, create their own jobs, create their own industries, and help themselves. And that is my mission field. And that's what I do on a day-to-day basis to make that happen. As it pertains to the book, one of the first things that I do right in the beginning of the book is really kind of debunk some of the commonly accepted beliefs around success. Things like, if you're passionate enough, you'll be successful. If you put in 10,000 hours, you'll be successful. Mm-hmm. If you're incredibly smart or you have some special talent, you'll be successful. Or Malcolm Gladwell attributes things to hidden variables, things that, like when you were born, your family upbringing, and even luck. And one by one, I debunk all of those and say that, look, in and themselves, they are not the sole criterion for success. So to give you an example, there are so many kids that play soccer, and did the U.S. soccer team make it to the World Cup? No, right? And same thing with musicians and dancers. So many on YouTube, but how many actually make it and become famous enough where they have a subscription of 1 million or more people following their YouTube or their Instagram, as an example. So the point is that those things in themselves don't necessarily work. The other thing is many success books, if you really read it, is only tailored for certain groups of people. I wanted to write a methodology where anyone of different backgrounds, education, aptitude, and interest, and passion can be successful. And that was very important to me because I don't believe that success should be just reserved for the top 0.001% of society. So how do we do it? I break it down into something called STRIVE methodology, where S stands for set a goal. And this is so important because, like I said before, Matt, many of us are driven by money, fame, or something else. But it's important that we have a goal that's bigger than ourselves. So in Good to Great, Jim Collins talks about level 5 leadership, where leaders have a purpose that's greater than themselves. And they have to look at the bigger picture. What is the purpose of their life? Because I'm of the opinion that we're not here to just consume and then die and be forgotten, right? So you have to have a guiding light for the rest of your life. And it cannot be about money, it cannot be about fame or glory. The letter T in STRIVE stands for think about that goal and plan for success. So the difference between those who realize success versus those who have just big dreams is about execution. And if you want to execute, you need to know what those tangible steps are. So you have to take that very large lifetime mission statement and then break it out into tangible yearly, monthly, weekly, and daily tasks. And everything, small and big, has to get you closer to that lifetime goal. Number 3 is R, in Strive, which stands for risk. Risk it, embrace it. And this probably is probably the hardest for most of us, where we're scared by doing something different, something new, something that's challenging. Maybe you have to speak in front of a large group of people. Maybe it's investing into a new business. Maybe it's changing in your career or going back to school or starting or ending a new relationship. Whatever that hard thing is uniquely for you, that is your first step to success. It's only when you stretch yourself that you begin to make huge gains.
That's good. Yeah.
Number 4 is I in Strive, which stands for insights, meaning what did you learn from your uncomfortable change? Now, remember I told you, Matt, that failure, the way you want to think about failure is experimentation, right? Just like Edison or any one of these great scientists, they didn't get it the first time. They had to go through thousands of iterations before they got it right. So it's very important that when you try something different, you have to self-examine that experiment and see what you did right and wrong, and to figure out how to optimize. So the next time you iterate again or try it again, you tweak your approach to increase your success. Number 5 is a V in Strive, which stands for verify progress. So important because many times, I've been working out most of my life, and people go to the gym. Sometimes they just kind of do it, and they don't really keep track of the reps and sets and so forth. Well, you got to quantify your direction. And just like we use Waze and GPS when we're driving, you have to verify your progress, and it has to be quantifiable, has to tangibly demonstrate that you are, in fact, moving incrementally towards your ultimate goal. And lastly is E in Strive, which stands for enhance yourself mentally and physically. Now, I'm one of those people that have had to learn the hard way that the journey to success has to be holistic. Years ago, I used to abuse my body, work 10, 12 hours, and eventually led to herniated disc and constant migraines and, expensive therapy, physical therapy, and so forth. What I realized is that in addition to sharpening your mind and acquiring new knowledge and expertise, you have to consider your physical, emotional, and spiritual needs. So I start each morning with the Bible. I exercise, I meditate, and when I sit down, my mind is clearer and I can be productive. And when I interact with people, I'm at my best. So you have to think holistically. Don't try to slave your way into success while neglecting your body or relationship or emotional spiritual needs. So my call to action is this. Regardless how you choose to define success, most of us want more out of life, right? Mm-hmm. For kids, for greater purpose. But if you're doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, it's not going to work. So I challenge you to do the things that's most uncomfortable for you. You, the listeners, have the opportunity to realize great success. And I wrote Strive in a way that's available to everyone. And that's anybody that's interested to get started on their journey, I'll give them something helpful, which is my Strive VIP sneak preview of the book with chapters 1 and 2 for free. To simply email my team at press, P-R-E-S-S, at scottamyx.com to receive a free copy.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, I appreciate you going over that. And there's so much more to the book as well. And there's things that you unpack in each of those, which is super helpful. And then your story was just really impactful to me. And I'm so glad that you included that. I think sometimes people can kind of try to frame things in a way to always look successful. But I love that you were just blatantly honest about here's where I'm at, here's where my name came from, here's my struggles, here's my wins, here's my successes. And it makes you so much more relatable and approachable. So I really encourage our listening audience to go out there, purchase a book, go out on Amazon. So if you Google it, you can find it, get a copy of it today, and let us know. Contact us at entrenator.com and contact Scott as well. We'd love to hear feedback about the book and how it helped you. Well, we are almost at that time. I wanted to get just a final thought before we close, something that you'd like to leave with our listeners.
Matt, I think something that's really kind of touched my heart is that because I travel the world so much, is I've learned to become a global citizen where I look beyond religion, race, ethnicity, the local culture, to the fundamental core humanity. So whether I'm in Saudi Arabia or Singapore or Indonesia or Colombia, I was in Costa Rica and Finland recently, there are some fundamental basic things about people. More or less, we're all trying to have loving relationships. We're trying to raise a family, and we need the economic means to support our families and to live life and to enjoy life. It's that simple. Yet people are struggling, and it's just, God has placed a burn on my heart to give people opportunities, Matt.
Yeah.
Everyone.
That's powerful. And I appreciate your heart. We appreciate your heart, here at the show as well, that we need more people like yourself that are outwardly not worried about, they're thinking about, oh, here am I, help me. But it's instead finding people, and there you are, finding people, seeking people out. And that's really, what it's all about. So I appreciate your time, Scott. Thank you so much for today. Like I said, I absolutely love the book, and can't give it enough high ratings enough, and encourage our listeners to download it and to purchase it for sure there. Before we close, just plugs, anything you'd like to promote.
Man, I'm just a messenger. What I would say is anybody that wants help, I've committed to, as part of my mission statement and life goals, is to mentor tens of thousands of people. Anybody that wants to access that, please feel free to ping me. I'm reachable via most social media.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, sir, so much for today. Thank you for your time. I got a lot out of it. I know our listeners are going to get a lot out of it too. So have a great day.
You too. Thank you, man.
We so appreciate you joining us for this week's episode. As a thank you for listening to the show, head over to entreneater.com to download your free audiobook, thanks to our friends at Audible. While on our website, you can purchase your very own official, super comfortable, super trendy Neato t-shirt. Looking to take your life and business to the next level? Click the Join Our Mastermind at the top of the screen. Have a question or comment for the show? Click Contact to message us. And finally, don't forget to subscribe to our show to stay current with all the amazing interviews from our guests. Now take what you've learned, apply it, and start living your Neato life now.